take 5 steps back, take a deep breath, and look at this and go, what exactly is the most important criteria that makes you money, or what you need to do to move forward? And then you have to stick with it.
This episode of Voices from the Field is the first of a new podcast series, Lessons Learned on a Southern Farm. In it, NCAT Gulf States Regional Coordinator Felicia Bell talks with Marguerite McClintock from Alchemy Farms in Huntsville, Alabama. Marguerite discusses the lessons she's learned from operating her certified organic vegetable farm and from raising heritage and registered sheep, specifically Katahdin and Gulf Coast native. She offers some tips and ideas that Alchemy Farm used to stay in business while maintaining the farm's organic integrity. Let's listen.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Lessons Learned from the South. Today, we are with Marguerite McClintock, and I am Felicia Bell from NCAT, because it's no longer Gulf States Regional Office. We want to be here to help everyone, regardless of where they are. And so today we're going to talk with an organic farmer, and she have been that for many, many years. I know she's working on some things that she could share with you at this point, but we wanted to give a perspective of an organic farmer and the lessons learned with that, how that began, what made her want to become an organic farmer. And so that is where we're going to start today. First and foremost, good morning. But I definitely wanted to start with you sharing who you are, where you're located, and the name of your farm.
Okay. Well, my name is Marguerite McClintock, and my one of my farms is Alchemy Farms and Plants. We are located in Huntsville, Alabama, where I'm recording this. I was lucky enough to acquire this property because I bought sheep. And I did not have this many sheep when I first started off. So this is one of I don't live over here, but I'm working on it. I would love to move into this little house project that I've started. And that was one of the reasons why you asked me, why did I get into organic? I've always been a sustainable, I've always believed in being a conservator for land. And if we don't take care of it, it's not going to sustain us. And I started off thinking this was going to be really simple. I'm just going to have a small little homestead, have a little fun. And then it kind of grew out of control. So that's the kind of, one thing led to another. It's for us, it was always our mission originally set off early was to be able to develop sustainable systems that farmers can use based on there's a whole different set of toolkits that commercial farmers use compared to compared to organic farmers. And even within the organic spectrum, it's a totally different type of, again, tool set for those who are small organic farmers to those who do crop 7,000 or more acres. It's just different. And so that was one of my things was, hey, my background was a financial analyst before I retired. And I do love making money, but I also realized how much I really enjoy these silly looking faces here. And that's kind of how I got into it. It was just one project after the other, leading to where I am now.
Oh, wow.
Does that answer that in a nutshell?
It does. It does.
And I'm still wondering what I'm doing.
Thank you so much. And I did hear you briefly talked about your career prior to farming. Can you expound on that a little bit more? I did not know you were a financial analyst. So what brought you from financial analyst to a farmer?
I try not to let too many people know because my husband likes to joke with me and say, for somebody who's supposed to know what they're doing when it comes to money, you're very good at spending it, So I try to I always tell farmers who come to me and ask how they get into it, I was like, do what I'm going to tell you to do. Don't do what I'm doing because you will lose money if you do what I'm doing. And I'm trying to be good because I know better, but it's hard. So for a while before I moved we came from actually from New Jersey. And I won't get into a long story, but I really did enjoy. My background was I did graduate from UW-Madison actually, and I swore I was never going to get into agriculture. And the reason why I say that is because I do like making money, and I do like keeping money. And my family was actually all in agriculture, but on the chemical side, like with DuPont. So that's kind of how I got into it. And, it was, I enjoyed it a lot. But then when I moved down here to Alabama, have always been an entrepreneur. And so I became a contractor, actually buying up houses and redoing them. And then somehow, I'm not sure how it happened. I think I acquired a piece of property, the one in Hampton Cove, and I love challenges. If somebody tells me no, I'm going to figure out a way how to do it. And I ended up with this piece of property, and it became my place to have my hobbies away from the house that I live in, because I do live in a yeah, I don't tell people this either, but I do live in a golf course community, and they don't really like it when you have too many projects that look messy. So it was easier for me to move close by. I'm actually very lucky to be surrounded by the city, but yet I'm in the county, so I can do all sorts of crazy projects, and nobody can tell me that I can't do it.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah, so that's how I started. And then it was originally I built Artisans Cove, and that was just meant to be a place where I was going to allow other people in the same position as me, where they needed a place to kind of be creative and not feel like somebody was breathing down their neck. So I built the infrastructure needed, to do what I wanted to do. And then if other people wanted to join, they were welcome to. And that's how Artisans Cove came about. And then eventually I had a bunch of kids coming over because I was working on 4-H and some other gardening groups just for fun. I've always loved to grow stuff, not for money or anything. And then my kids were homeschooled, so they like chickens. And next thing I know, I got into chickens. And basically, that's how Alchemy Farms came about, was because I wanted to get involved more with farming and teaching. And then the big kicker actually happened in 2013. I was involved in a kind of a crazy scam where a guy got involved with the Cypress Creek Organic Farms. And that's how I met Karen Wynn and a lot of good people. But he was basically involved in scamming a whole bunch of farmers on organic greenhouses. I'm not sure if you know that story. So that was like all over the news. And to this day, even from 2013, I still get phone calls where they want to make it into a movie. It's crazy. But
Wow.
long story short, I realized that I really liked helping people, working with people. And that's how I also met Felicia in 2013. I went to one of her small farms classes, workshops, because I knew that what this guy was doing didn't make any sense. But I'm always a believer. You give somebody a chance until they prove that their idea is totally crazy, because you never know, right? Somebody may have a really crazy idea and it actually works out. So that kind of led me into fully opening Alchemy Farms in 2013. I actually became the first certified organic farm with the USDA, and then I actually helped 5 other farms that were part of his, like I said, the scam to get their organic certification. And I realized becoming organically certified at that time, even Alabama did not have a lot of farms. I think less than 20 were certified, even less now. And I think the biggest problem is because we look at organic certification as marketing, and a lot of people would poo-poo it down. It's like, oh, you don't need this. It's just a way for big companies to make money. But I looked at it as, again, a challenge that said, hey, how can you open your mouth and say that you are better than organic if you haven't even gotten the certification? If you want to do something, you need to understand the whole process. And so that was one of the reasons why I kept the certification, to be able to becoming organically certified was a way of me kind of like going, okay, here are the top guidelines that I have to reach. And if I can do this, then at least I know here's what's expected of me. It's kind of like having a tutor or like a trainer, right? If you're going to lose weight, you can certainly lose weight on your own, or you can go and go, I'm going to do this with a trainer and it will help keep me on track. And a lot of people don't realize that organic certification does not guarantee that you'll be a great business, but it does teach you to help organize and keep yourself managed. Does that make sense?
It does. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because if you're familiar with it, you have to write out OSPs. That's like writing out a business plan. I mean, a lot of people get into farming, homesteading, because we all go on Facebook and YouTube and we're like, oh, how cute. We have little sheep or lambs or ducks, and we all think it's, people always tell me, oh, farming must be so hard. But unless you actually have your hands dirty, or when it's cold and wet and you're trying to save that last sheep that's determined to have her baby out there on the fields, you don't really know what it's like to be able to go, okay, I'm not letting this happen again. We are putting you guys all in the barn, or we have to build a better fence system. And you always have to stay one step ahead.
Yes.
Maybe 5 in my case.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, it's not just your case. That is all farms. We may not admit it, but it's all farms. You have to be 2, 3, 4, 5 steps ahead, or you will self-implode because it's just so many opportunities for things to just go awry. So no, you're not alone.
Yep. And then that makes it, another thing that makes it more difficult is, again, talking about small organic. And I'm sorry, you probably have questions. I probably should be quiet.
No, you're good. Okay. You're good. Thank you.
What I was saying is that if you're a small specialty growing farm, or especially if you're a minority farmer, I find it more difficult because, for example, I was lucky enough that I had capital to do a lot of the crazy stuff that I was doing, right? And I have a background in business, although, again, sometimes in the rush of things, I don't always apply stuff as I need to. And I have to remind myself to stop. This is a business. Take 5 steps back, take a deep breath, and look at this and go, what exactly is the most important criteria that makes you money, or what you need to do to move forward? And then you have to stick with it, because no one, it's not fun having to rebuild your fence. I would much rather go and be hatching baby chicks, or whipping up some a new, like I'm making cheese right now. Okay, even though I'm out here at the farm, I've got my cheese set up over at the shop, and it's much more fun to do that. But I know that none of that makes me money if I don't come back and make sure my damn sheep don't get out of this fence if we don't get this gate done. Or my young friend just pulled up with her brother today is our cleanup day. We have to set aside some time and go, okay, you don't want to do this, but we got to clean up. We got to move sheep at the right time so that they're bred at the right time. We have to make sure everybody's dewormed if we need to. As you know, we're organically certified as far as in our crops, but our sheep, our livestock are not, even though we try to do as much as possible organic standards, if we need to, we do use dewormer on our sheep if it's necessary. And we've been very lucky. Our sheep have been completely on grass pasture right now that's not treated, and they have not been treated. But we did have something recently where we lost an ewe that just succumbed to probably worms, and we had to bring her to the vet, and they were like, this is what you have to do to rescue them, and that's you do what you have to do.
Yes, definitely.
For decades, NCAT's ATTRA program has been the trusted place to find practical and cutting-edge answers to sustainable agriculture questions. But what if you're the one with the great idea? The forum on ATTRA's new website connects you with other farmers, ranchers, and land managers who are sharing their practical know-how. Stop by at attra.ncat.org and join the conversation.
Could you, before we move further, could you share what breed of sheep do you have on the farm?
So I started off with Katahdin sheep. And my choice for the Katahdins was because as a commercial sheep, they're easy to maintain. They are you don't shear them. They produce lots of babies. And then somehow in 2000, I'm gonna say 2019 or 2018, I'm not sure how it happened, but I ended up. Oh, I know what happened. I was crazy. I won an auction up at the producers auction, and I ended up with 12 sheep, Gulf Coast native sheep from Alabama A&M University. They had their sheep up there for auction. And I made a phone call to Columbia, and it was one of those. I've always known about those sheep. They have a lot of benefits. And when they said they were auctioning these sheep up, I was like, oh no, you can't kill them. So me, like an idiot, I called up to Tennessee and I said, hey, put my bid in for these sheep. And I'm thinking, there's no way I'm going to win. It was just it was my gesture of trying to be nice to rescue sheep. And all I know is the end of the day, I got a phone call saying, hey, come and get your sheep. And I thought, what? So I drove 2 hours to go get my Gulf Coast sheep. And that's what I did. Was I ended up with 12 sheep. And for the first 6 months, that was how I also ended up buying more pasture to accommodate.
Wow.
So that's one thing I'm going to tell you. Don't do that. Always be prepared before you jump into a project. But I was lucky again that I was able to acquire that pretty fast, and I had a backup plan. So yeah, I ended up with these 12 Gulf Coast sheep. We are moving pretty much all towards Gulf Coast sheep right now, even though they are more work. But for several reasons. One, their genetics are important to retain as a heritage sheep. And there's a lot of things that we don't understand fully, but I know that just this year, for example, when I was telling you about how we ended up with an ewe that has worms, it was a Katahdin. So for some reason, the Gulf Coast sheep and the Katahdins, under the same environment and same stress factors, the Gulf Coast always seemed to survive a little bit better. Are there still some issues as far as wool? Because, now you got to shear them once a year, and there's not too many shearers around. And I'm too old to be shearing. Well, I'm not old. It's just that I'm not in shape to shear. But what do you do with that wool? It's great if you're just a small homesteader, but you saw I have 41 female sheep over here. If everybody has babies and I'm shearing every sheep, what do you do with all that fleece? So that's the next problem that we are addressing. How do we market this? So that's how I have 2 flocks of sheep that I keep separate. I do still keep a small round of registered Katahdins, only because I still like the breed. As far as, I hate to say this, but on a dollar per dollar, as far as for sales for meat, the Katahdins still do better. But they obviously, under the same stress, environmental stress, they require a little bit more. They may not be organic. In other words, I think that if one is going to make a livestock organically certified, the Gulf Coast sheep is maybe the direction that I need to look at.
That's helpful to know, because again, that's what this is about, is to share your perspective, your lessons learned based upon what you're doing. And see, that right there was such a tidbit just for people to research that. We're not telling anyone to pick one over the other, but just that statement alone, it would help a new and beginning farmer before they buy a sheep to do the research between the Katahdin and the Gulf Coast native, if they're even in this area. And so thank you so much for sharing that, because we do know that it is not necessarily difficult, but we in the South do not have a lot, probably not any, that's another research question, of farmers that their livestock is organic. So that is, it's not to say that it's difficult. It's the same paperwork, the organic system plan. It is rules that lies with livestock that's totally different than vegetable and fruit production, but it's doable. But for whatever reason in the South, it's not a lot of farmers picking that up and saying, yes, I want to produce organic raised or organic labeled sheep or beef or whatever that animal would be.
And it's when people say, oh my gosh, organic, you can't do this, you can't do that. That's not really the case. It's just that you do it differently, and you have to kind of think way in advance of, okay, what happens if my sheep gets sick or if my chicken gets sick? Do I have another area that I can quarantine them in and pull them out? I mean, because I think everybody is under the conception, just like with plants, that, oh, if my sheep is sick, I'm not going to give them any medication. I don't think any farmer wants to think about mistreating their animal, right? With crops, if you're growing it organically and your tomatoes all get eaten up by hornworms, yeah, you lose money, but you don't feel as bad because it's vegetables. Versus with animals, I think every farm I ever look at, when somebody has a sick animal or something doesn't go right, what's the first thing we do is we panic, right? Slightly, going, oh my gosh, what do I do? And that's just even using normal commercial, like, hey, the vet is going to give you Cydactin or Valbazen. And we know very well that a lot of these dewormers do not work anymore. In fact, our Alabama, she was really amazing. She's the vet she came up and she was doing blood work. We did testing on all of our Gulf Coast sheep, both here and at A&M. And the results that came back is pretty cool. I can't completely share it with you, but I can tell you that most of them are scabies resistant. And so that was pretty interesting because she was wondering herself how many of them would be able to resist deworming, since deworming is not really working. It's not even a matter of using it. It just ain't working, right? And so if we can find the resistance in our heritage sheep that have survived, then this may be the alternative for all sheep, not just Gulf Coast sheep, if this is something that we need to look into, because maybe they carry something that the other ones don't have, right?
Yes. Yes.
So,
Wow.
but you're right. And it's also prohibitive feeding your animals. Like, my sheep will eat grass. So I'm blessed that I have sources to hay that are not treated. And you do have to plan way in advance to make sure you buy hay that's not treated, or alfalfa, because you make sure that you have, it's all about your system. If you have well taken care of animals, then they are not prone to getting sick. If you have a way to maintain their hoofs, then they're not prone to having hoof rot, right? So and how many you carry in your managed, in your flock, in there. So those are all those things to be considered. But just chickens, for example, how many of us actually grow grains or things to feed our chickens? Chickens don't just eat grass. They got to eat some protein, right? So that's always been a problem too, because most farmers are like, I can't afford, organic feed for my chickens. Nobody wants to pay me that kind of money. You can't compete. Like our eggs, there's no way we could compete with Walmart or Aldi's for selling eggs organically, So that's also, for a small specialty farmer, it's hard because you're trying to grow maybe 20 different things or work on 20 different projects, because there's no way you're going to compete with the big time farmer. Example, I did tomatoes this year as a trial for Tennessee State University, and they were doing this all organically. And I came to the conclusion that, wow, there is so much work. And I've done a lot of vegetable growing, but again, if you consider the amount of work that you have to put in manual labor to grow those tomatoes and sell them versus what obviously people are buying at Publix, you can't compete growing regular tomatoes. You have to have some kind of specialty tomato that other big producers, even though they're growing it organically, they won't touch, So it may have to be some kind of cherry tomato, heirloom tomato, something. that's different.
Exactly. And then definitely wanted to share that most of the farmers, they want to get big really, really fast. And that I'm talking about
Yeah,
the small producers. And just my tip for farmers is always think about what you just said, being a niche marketer, like making sure you're capturing something that a client or a consumer want to buy and purchase, but it's so different, or the management of it may be a little bit complicated for a larger producer, where a smaller producer may have the time and the energy and the infrastructure to grow that specialty crop. And so
right,
that makes
right.
you stand out. You're
Yes,
standing out and stuff, but just stay small. Why not?
yeah,
And what I mean by small is your community. Make it
yeah,
local, make it hyper local. You can make money off of that just selling in your community. So not necessarily small financially, that's not what I'm talking about, but staying small for as your geography.
yeah.
It's yeah.
And you really have to. I agree with you. You have to really develop that networking too, because an example for that tomato thing, when we did this for the university, it was kind of at the last minute, so nothing was planned out. They were supposed to actually, well, make the long story short, we ended up with tons and tons and tons of tomatoes. Okay, not enough that one would go, hey, let me call the wholesale markets and sell these tomatoes. Because if you sell on the wholesale level for the amount of time that one put into it, it's not worth it. You might as well feed the chickens with it, right? But at the same time, most farmers are, if they're going to, and I'm talking about, we only grew, I think it was 150 tomato plants, and these were heritage, but these were Ruckers. So these were not any like, oh wow, these are like big, surprising, different tomatoes. These were like ones that you would find at Publix, just organically grown. If I did not already happen to have the network where at the last minute I was making phone calls, chefs that I dealt with, and called, hey, I've got all these tomatoes. Can you take them off my hands? And if I didn't, I would be making tons and tons of, I don't know, tomato soup, tomato puree. I'm just saying that it would have been a loss for a farmer if they did not have their marketing and their sales in plan already.
Now that is a great tip that most new beginning farmers forget because
Yeah,
they're
we,
so
we
driven
grow.
to get a harvest, like they're so driven to plant and get a harvest, plant and get a harvest. They don't think, once I harvest, where is it going? And so thank you
Yeah,
for that tidbit, because we really have to keep talking about and sharing that farmers wear many hats. We have to be over many
yes,
things. And one of those is logistics. Where is
yeah,
my product going? That's it. And most
yeah,
people don't think of
yeah,
that. And it's so many ways to do it. It's your choice, because you could be on an online market. You could, we have online farmers markets now. You could do a CSA, which starts online. So it's just so many ways. You could set up shop at a farmer's market. So we're not telling you how to sell and where to sell. We're speaking on the ones that never think about where they're going to sell. Like, you have to
yeah,
know that end result. What is the outcome from what all this work, all these things I've done, the buying the seeds or the buying of the transplants. You always have to think, where is this going? And most farmers kind of take that for granted. They make the assumption they'll be able to sell it because it's food. And I'm like, no, you got to have a
yeah.
plan.
Yeah, especially since you're competing, you're not the only farmer out there, you know? So you're competing with other farms too as well. And down here in the South, even though we may be organically certified, that's just one more credential, but it does not. So most people are like, they go to a farmer's market, they're like, oh, this is local.
Mhm.
Um, but the thing is, the farmer next door to you is local too, and they still have signs that say, "Hey, we grow without any we grow without any synthetics. But the biggest thing for us, we found, now we're in Huntsville, so we do have a way we develop a relationship with people like chefs, and you go, hey, I have a story to tell you about these tomatoes. Reach out to your client and we'll provide you with these tomatoes. And so you kind of, I hate to say this, you're training your chefs and developing your own market.
Mm-hmm. And most people don't think of that. That's the thing. One of the things I wanted to back up briefly, you mentioned a name, and we want to definitely give the shout out to Alicia Shevers, which is at Alabama A&M. They have wonderful programs. They're able to help producers with many, many aspects of your farming operation. So if you're in the Alabama area, please, reach out to Alicia.
Yeah.
And there's so many other people that work in Alabama that assist. That live in Alabama that assist farmers. So she is one of many, but we have a close relationship with her, and we know her programs, and we know that it's success stories. Like, she's not only training farmers, but she has success stories from those farmers. They're actually understanding the way she trains, the way she teach, and they're able to go implement a lot of times immediately. So definitely want to shout out Alicia at Alabama A&M.
And, you can't sit there as a farmer. You're going to have to be very proactive in finding and developing your network to be able to go, okay, I have a problem. Who can I call to tell me, how can I start fixing it?
Exactly.
That's it for this episode. Thanks for listening. Additional information about this episode and related resources can be found at attra.ncat.org. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe to Voices from the Field wherever you get your podcasts. I'm your host, Rich Myers. ATTRA, Voices from the Field, is produced by the National Center for Appropriate Technology, headquartered in Butte, Montana. It's supported by the USDA Rural Business Cooperative Service as part of NCAT's ATTRA Sustainable Agriculture program. Any opinions, findings, conclusions, or recommendations expressed in this recording are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of the USDA or NCAT. We'll catch you again next week, and until then, keep on farming.